quite evident now that the Mueller probe is illegitimate. This effort to attempt to interview the President of the United States has now reached the point where there's just no doubt at all that the President should refuse to be interviewed by them. And that's because it's clear that that Mueller and his team of Democratic thugs are acting in bad faith. They know that the President, under Department of Justice rules, cannot be indicted. They have no evidence to indict him. The office of Robert Mueller was created by Rod Rosenstein illegally. He mentioned no crime to be investigated. All of this leads to the ultimate conclusion that the perpetuation of this investigation by Mueller is doing grave damage to the United States. It's doing grave damage to United States foreign policy. It's doing grave damage to U.S. law enforcement because of the thug-like tactics that have been used in the Manafort case and in the Cohen case. And it points to something that really is disturbing. After watching the Deputy Attorney General of the United States, Rod Rosenstein, accuse Congress of trying to extort him and others in the department by conducting legitimate constitutional oversight, I would say that between Mueller and Rosenstein and the absent Attorney General, God bless him, we have a very serious crisis in American federal law enforcement.
Oh, I agree. And I think it's the biggest abuse of power, corruption scandal in our history. Let's stay on Rod Rosenstein a second. Rod Rosenstein wrote a letter, said the FBI could never recover if James Comey stayed at the helm. So he would be a witness on that part of it.
Correct.
We've also discovered that Rod Rosenstein, we talk about the FISA applications that relied on unverified, uncorroborated, a dossier paid for by Hillary Clinton. They never told the judge it was paid for by Hillary. And then he went on to say that if there are false information presented to a FISA court, there's serious consequences. Isn't he implicating himself? The same statement when he said that he's not going to be extorted?
Of course. The problem here for Rod Rosenstein is he has multiple conflicts of interest. He shouldn't be supervising this case. He wrote the memorandum that led to the firing of James Comey. He signed the FISA applications. He continues to know and personally care about Comey and Mueller and others. He should be removed from this case. This is absolutely disgraceful. And now he will pretend that he is above all of this. But when all is said and done, Mr. Rosenstein represents a part of the department that I thought we had lost a long time ago when the Obama administration people left office, but apparently they haven't left office.
Joe, we're headed for a showdown, and that is every attorney that I know says the president should never sit with Robert Mueller, Andrew Weissman, his pit bull with his atrocious track record, his team of Democratic donors only, and if the showdown goes down and the president says no, if they won't agree to proffer written answers to legitimate questions, which I don't think they will at this point, then that means that it's likely that Robert Mueller will then subpoena the president of the United States before a grand jury. This is where it gets somewhat legally a little bit tricky. Let's walk down that road. What happens when, and what should the response be?
Well, first of all, I think that if Mueller issued a subpoena to the president, it would be an unconstitutional subpoena. Since he knows the president cannot be indicted, and since he knows that the president is not a necessary witness to anything that he is investigating, it is clear that he would be using the grand jury subpoena for only one reason: to get testimony from the president to use in an impeachment recommendation report to the Deputy Attorney General. That is an illegal use of a grand jury subpoena. The president should resist it. They should take it all the way to the Supreme Court, because under Article 2 of the Constitution, all executive power rests in the President of the United States. He had ultimate authority to fire James Comey, and he did.
And if the courts make the wrong decision,
of course, the courts can always be wrong.
We know that.
But it's going to go all the way to the Supreme Court if he issues a subpoena. Let me make a prediction. Mueller will never issue a subpoena.
Why?
Because he cannot win. I disagree with some of the comments of Judge Napolitano earlier about the fact that Mueller will win ultimately on a subpoena. Let me just say this. Mueller will lose ultimately on a subpoena because it is unconstitutional.
If it was granted and the president pled the fifth, then they would offer him immunity, and then the perjury trap remains. Correct or not?
That is technically correct, but you cannot issue immunity to someone when you are doing it illegally under the statute, because the only reason he would be giving him immunity would be to force testimony for an impeachment report. Mueller does not have the authority to issue an impeachment report, and he does not have the authority to use a grand jury subpoena to get presidential testimony for impeachment or any other criminal activity that never occurred, because he's dealing with the power of the president to fire people. So if Mueller wants to have that fight and tie it up in the courts for 6 months to a year, he can do it, but he will be doing a grave disservice to himself, because at this point, Mueller has become a cross between Madame Defarge and Inspector Javert, and it's an embarrassment.
All right, Joe DeGenova, always appreciate you being on the program.
How they selected one half a sentence from the mayor's statement on your show, but they missed the beginning where he said, amongst other things, that's the reason why he was fired. These people haven't even passed year one in journalism school, and they have to maintain a narrative. It's like those 49 questions. Those 49 questions are a mark of desperation. There is no case, there is no conclusion. So 3/4 of those questions are about trying to police your thought. We only do that in dictatorships. We don't do that in America, Sean.
Yeah, and by the way, these are the actual questions. What did you think about Comey's testimony? What did you think about Sessions' recusal? What did you think about the appointment of his special counsel? It doesn't matter what he thought.
No.
It matters what he did. And the fact that goes over their head, on the one hand, it infuriates me. On the other hand, I got to laugh. Dan Bongino, look at this, that Rudy Giuliani, the president's attorney, talked about how Mueller's questions are a perjury trap. He talked about Comey, we just played it, being a disgraceful liar, and how the probe is tainted. He talked about how Hillary's a criminal, belongs in jail, and that Comey fixed the entire case with Hillary. Then he talked about how Comey should be prosecuted for leaking confidential information. None of that, for the most part, is covered today. But the only thing they cover is Stormy, and they even got that wrong.
Well, Sean, they're invested in this now. They can't get away from the Russia hoax. They're embedded in this. They've sold it to us for a year. But, Sean, this is a case built by liars for liars. The three liars, Clapper, Brennan, and Comey, they built this on a bed of lies, this collusion hoax, for liars up on Capitol Hill and people in the media that had to obstruct the Trump presidency with a fake collusion hoax. This is nonsense. And on the topic of the question, Sean, let me just tell you, when I was a Secret Service agent, I went to a very sophisticated advanced interrogation school. They actually came into our training center. One of the things they always taught us when you're trying to get people into a trap in an interview is ask open-ended questions. In other words, don't ask, is your name Sean Hannity? You're just going to say yes. An open-ended question would be, well, what's your name? Because if you're involved in an identity theft case, you may slip up and actually give the wrong name. That's what they're trying to do. Do not do this interview. It is a huge mistake. It's a trap.
What do you think, Sebastian, to that very point?
The president, right now, I've been saying this from the beginning, should never, ever sit down. Joe, Victoria are right. They have no right to do this. The president cannot be indicted. At the end of the day, this is a perjury trap. Nothing more, nothing less. This man wants a scalp. Mueller wants a scalp, and along with Comey and McCabe, they have destroyed the reputation of the FBI. I'm getting texts today from FBI agents saying they record every meeting they go to now because jurors no longer believe them.
Sad.
3 men have destroyed the FBI.
By the way, it's not them. I will never sweep with a broad brush here. This is a few at the top, not the rank and file. And Dan, you've worked with these guys. We know how great they are.
They're great. Yeah, they're terrific. But, Sean, listen to me, guys. They have nothing. Do you understand Mueller has nothing? You can't fabricate collusion that didn't happen. This isn't Back to the Future with Marty McFly. There's nothing here, Sean. So what do they have? All they have is process crimes, lying to the FBI, and a perjury trap. They have nothing.
When you think for the president of the United States, you would think they'd put the country first here. But for them to succeed, this president has to fail.
Sean. It's about them. It's not about America.
That is sad.
How they selected one half a sentence from the mayor's statement on your show, but they missed the beginning where he said, amongst other things that's the reason why he was fired. These people haven't even passed year one in journalism school, and they have to maintain a narrative. It's like those 49 questions. Those 49 questions are a mark of desperation. There is no case, there is no conclusion. So 3/4 of those questions are about trying to police your thought. We only do that in dictatorships. We don't do that in America, Sean.
Yeah, and by the way, these are the actual questions. What did you think about Comey's testimony? What did you think about Sessions' recusal? What did you think about the appointment of his special counsel? It doesn't matter what he thought.
No.
It matters what he did. And the fact that goes over their head, on the one hand, it infuriates me. On the other hand, I got to laugh. Dan Bongino, look at this, that Rudy Giuliani, the president's attorney, talked about how Mueller's questions are a perjury trap. He talked about Comey, we just played it, being a disgraceful liar, and how the probe is tainted. He talked about how Hillary's a criminal, belongs in jail, and that Comey fixed the entire case with Hillary. Then he talked about how Comey should be prosecuted for leaking confidential information. None of that, for the most part, is covered today. But the only thing they cover is Stormy, and they even got that wrong.
Well, Sean, they're invested in this now. They can't get away from the Russia hoax. They're embedded in this. They've sold it to us for a year. But, Sean, this is a case built by liars for liars. The three liars, Clapper, Brennan, and Comey. They built this on a bed of lies, this collusion hoax, for liars up on Capitol Hill and people in the media that had to obstruct the Trump presidency with a fake collusion hoax. This is nonsense. And on the topic of the question, Sean, let me just tell you, when I was a Secret Service agent, I went to a very sophisticated advanced interrogation school. They actually came into our training center. One of the things they always taught us when you're trying to get people into a trap in an interview is ask open-ended questions. In other words, don't ask, is your name Sean Hannity? You're just going to say yes. An open-ended question would be, well, what's your name? Because if you're involved in an identity theft case, you may slip up and actually give the wrong name. That's what they're trying to do. Do not do this interview. It is a huge mistake. It's a trap.
What do you think, Sebastian, to that very point?
The president, right now, I've been saying this from the beginning, should never, ever sit down. Joe, Victoria are right. They have no right to do this. The president cannot be indicted. At the end of the day, this is a perjury trap. Nothing more, nothing less. This man wants a scalp. Mueller wants a scalp, and along with Comey and McCabe, they have destroyed the reputation of the FBI. I'm getting texts today from FBI agents saying they record every meeting they go to now because jurors no longer believe them.
Sad.
3 men have destroyed
the FBI. By the way, it's not
FBI.
them. I will never sweep with a broad brush here. This is a few at the top, not the rank and file. And Dan, you've worked with these guys. We know how great they are.
They're great. Yeah, they're terrific. But, Sean, listen to me, guys. They have nothing. Do you understand Mueller has nothing? You can't fabricate collusion that didn't happen. This isn't Back to the Future with Marty McFly. There's nothing here, Sean. So what do they have? All they have is process crimes, lying to the FBI, and a perjury trap. They have nothing.
When you think for the president of the United States, you would think they'd put the country first here. But for them to succeed, this president has to fail. They don't love the country, Sean.
It's about them. It's not about America.
That is sad.
I look back at some history here, and back in the 80s and 90s, the saving and loan crisis, right? Over 1,000 SNLs, 1,000 plus SNLs went under. Right. You know, a lot of it was criminal there, right? Not one law firm in the United States was issued a search warrant. In that incredible. Right. And here, this 4-person law firm is the subject of this search warrant. Now, you know, it could be, I don't know the facts, Lou, but it takes a criminal predicate to get a Title III, under Title III, to get a wiretap, number one. Right. The media is reporting there was a wiretap. I find that that's probably unlikely. Right. I don't see where they could get the probable cause for that. But to execute a search warrant, they got to articulate a criminal act, a predicate. You know, this crime has taken place, and we want to. We've done everything, and now we need to search and get these records. Or if it's national security, there's a national security involvement. One of those two things. And I think time will tell whether or not any of those things really play out correctly.
We now are hearing a correction from the original report, which was at NBC News, that it was not surveillance in the form of a wiretap.
Oh, it was a pen register.
A pen register,
yeah.
Number,
sure.
Pen number registry. And, but even that is outside the bounds, it would seem, of the president's personal attorney.
You know, Lou, as you know better than I probably. I come from a different perspective, but from the very beginning of Donald Trump running for president, and then when it got clear that he was going to be the nominee, this conspiracy, I've called it a fifth column, I've called it a bunch of things,
right.
But there's no question that they were down for Trump. They don't want an outsider. They don't want, the hogs don't want their snouts pulled out of the food pub, right. the Business Roundtable, the Chamber of Commerce. They want cheap labor. They don't want to close the border. And meanwhile, the American middle class and lower class are just suffering under these inane policies of the Obama administration. And here's Donald Trump that comes along and I tell you, in a year and a quarter or whatever he's been in, he's done more for this country than the last three presidents combined.
I say quite often on this broadcast, there has been no president since FDR who's done as much in as short an order.
Yeah.
And what he has accomplished in terms of the economy, foreign policy, the broad number of challenges, all of these establishment and these elite orthodoxies that you're referring to have got to be beside themselves, because he's doing something that no one has done before in the presidency in our lifetimes, and that is to walk into the Oval Office and actually fix problems,
right.
Actually do what he's saying,
and you know
keep
what?
promises.
He's going to prevail. You know, I've known him for a long time, 43 years. You know, if he has a few off-color remarks or this or that, what's that got to do, the American people out there, with the fact that he's running the country the way it needs to be run? Yeah. And if I could, Lou, I know you don't need this, but a copy of the Declaration of Independence.
Thank you.
And the Constitution.
Yep.
And if I might just take a quick moment.
Absolutely.
I have to put my glasses
Anytime.
on. Article 2, Section 1. The executive power shall be vested in a president of the United States of America.
Period.
Exclamation point.
Yeah.
Period. And here we got these frivolous, idiotic questions that they want to ask our president. I mean, nonsensical. What do you think on this day? What did you think last Thursday? I mean, Mueller is just out of control. And the American people and the weak-kneed leadership of our Congress, I hate to say that, but they are. Yeah. They are the most ineffective, weak-kneed, you know, they're just so infected with that swamp that they won't back out. And we got 30 or so courageous young people in the Congress,
right,
that really want to do the right thing.
Yeah, and most of them are in the Freedom Caucus.
Yeah.
It's to me extraordinary that Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell don't have the courage or the integrity to stand up with this president and say, Robert Mueller is out of control. Yeah. He is running an extra legal operation and has in fact formed a super authority over our constitutional republic that is not envisioned by our founders, and certainly not by the Constitution of the United States.
And it's not funny, as you know, Lou. It's sad. It's very, very sad what's going on with these people. It's just outrageous. It really is. It's incredible. And Comey is just I mean, the he's lost his mind. He's just he's become a pathological liar. He provided no leadership to the FBI, no discipline to the FBI, and that filth is down. The FBI is still a great organization. I guarantee it. You know, you get rid of those, I don't know what the number is, 10, 20. You get rid of those sycophants at the top and provide some leadership and some discipline, and the FBI will come right back, because that's what they crave. But that's not what's happening. And they're embarrassed by things like Paul Manafort. That raid into his home was outrageous. The FBI should never be involved. If I was the head of the FBI office, I would have refused to go on that raid and to do that at 4 o'clock in the morning if the reports are right.
Yes.
About his wife in bed in her nightgown and the children. Yeah. They should be sued to the end of the law, those people involved in that thing. It's outrageous. And this thing with the lawyer it's not as obscene. I don't think they had machine guns or anything, but it's still way out of the paradigm of what normally happens, as I told you about the SNL.
Yeah, and going back to that crisis, the SNL crisis in the mid-'80s, was the largest financial crisis in the country's history. The industry itself fell apart. And there were, as you point out, and I hadn't considered it, but there were no raids on law firms, and one could probably make a much better case.
They were big law firms. They didn't want to take on the big law firms.
Well,
let's take on this little law firm with this president that's trying to do the right thing, you know?
Yeah, the FBI itself, you do believe it's retrievable?
I think so. We need some leadership. Leadership's the key.
They're fighting the president of the United States.
They've promoted, Mueller and Comey over the years have promoted the wrong people without experience. You know, we need
people without
to
character.
run the FBI. We need investigators to run the FBI. We don't need another attorney.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know Chris Wray. Maybe he's a good guy. But we don't need another member of the gentry over there.
Chris Wray hasn't proved a single thing, either within the FBI or to the president or to the American people. He has been stonewalling Congress in its oversight role, Jim. He is no better than Mueller or Comey or any of their
the Deputy Attorney General. I mean, what is he doing being the Deputy Attorney General? He signed one of the continuations of the FISA law, the FISA intercept. Can you imagine? You know, that thing full of all, you know, fictitious information, and he signs it.
Fraudulent.
And he's prancing around like the cock on the walk. You know, the arrogance, challenging the Congress. You know,
he won't be extorted.
He won't be extorted. I mean, who is this guy? I mean, what is this?
Well, he's part of the deep state, and he thinks he's just cute as hell.
And where is Judge Sessions? A real good guy. I met him in my younger days. Yeah. But he must be locked up in the men's room or something. I don't know.
I don't know what's happened to him. I think it's one of the saddest stories I've ever seen.
How can he let this guy do what he's doing?
Well, he, you know, you find out. There's an old saying, you know, if you want to find out who someone is, give them power.
Oh, without question.
We have found out who Jeff Sessions is.
And give him a lot of power, then you really find out.
Yeah. Such disrespect for the presidency without, in 2 years, finding anything and arrogantly saying we're going to press ahead, and a bunch of fools on the left clucking saying we'll impeach the president were he to raise a finger against this unlawful special counsel. This is ignorance.
You know, Robert Mueller was appointed illegally, in my judgment. If you look at the special counsel law.
In the judgment of so many.
Right. If you look at the special counsel law, it's very restrictive. And Rod Rosenstein, who appointed Mueller, abused that law and misused that law.
Let's do a test. Why is there a special counsel? How did James Comey create a special counsel?
Well, there used to be, by congressional authorization, a statutory law called the Independent Counsel. Everybody hated it, so Congress let it lapse. So what the Department of Justice did is create, within the Code of Federal Regulations, new rules for a special counsel.
The deep state Bible.
Right. Now, it's codified into administrative law, and the president has authority over it, so he can get rid of the law, he can fire Mueller, and he can fire Rosenstein.
Let's look at the compounding absurdities. The fact that this is some, you know, it's from the ether, it is formed.
Right.
From cowardice and refusal to take responsibility. Secondly, we're looking at a president who is accused of somehow colluding with the Russians because he fired an FBI director. You tell me what damn sense that makes on any level. There is no sense in any of it.
It doesn't make any sense.
Isn't there a responsibility for us to make sense in government?
Well, the president can go to the American people and make his case and say, look, they've abused this federal regulation in creating this monster in the, you know, special counsel. They've gone way beyond the bounds of decency. And it's time we put an end to it. I am ending it. And I will give Mueller 30 days to end it, or if not, I'll fire him. He could do that. There would be tremendous political fallout.
Oh, you're going to get fallout from the left no matter what. And from the idiots in the rhino establishment of the Republican Party.
But the president has authority to
silent.
Do it. Right.
He has an opportunity to condition the battleground. And that is get out there. And those rallies that you just saw in Michigan, you know, take that times 20. As he prepares the country for what has to come. I mean, the country's sick of this bull. I mean, absolutely sick of it.
They're absolutely sick of it. Look, if the president is, in fact, served with a subpoena to appear in front of a grand jury, he can file in federal court a motion to quash and say, you have no authority to do this. Now, I will say that Bill Clinton tried to challenge a grand jury subpoena under the independent counsel, and it didn't work for him. He ended up testifying for 4 hours in front of a grand jury.
Well, let's cut through.
So appear in front of the grand jury, and as to many
without being charged with a crime?
As to many of the questions invoke executive privilege, as to the others, take the fifth. That ends the whole thing.
Well, it may end it, but it doesn't change it. And the fact is, you've got to reach into that Department of Justice, you've got to reach into that FBI, and you have got to purge those corrupt fools from the leadership of those agencies.
I agree with you 100%.
You've got to change the mindset of a cowardly Congress.
And that is the authority of the president. He can exercise it if he wants to, and simultaneously make the case in front of the American public that these people deserve to be fired.
This is the time. He is risking his presidency, and the fact is there are so many complicit, silent people within the Republican Party. Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan should have the guts to stand side by side with this president. They don't. The ABA should be embarrassed that the legal profession is behaving as it is, because this is a corrupt, and I mean to the bone, corrupt judicial system and legal system that we are watching work.
Oh, it absolutely is. This is the unfettered power of rogue agencies that are now the so-called deep state.
Yeah. And with that, Greg, as always,
my pleasure.
Thank you, sir.
Unchecked power to undo an election by the people. They came after my husband like this. These people are so far from Elliot Ness, they're a million light years away. And these are politically motivated opportunists who use their offices for their own personal enrichment, to further their careers, to sell books.
I don't think Bob Mueller needs. I don't think Bob Mueller needs to further his career. I mean, he's been FBI director. He's esteemed by Republicans and Democrats. However, he also authorized, and Lana, you can get in on this. He did authorize a raid that was kind of reminiscent of both Manafort and Michael Cohen. This like pre-dawn raid. The kids are there. Everyone's shaking. They're afraid, and they go in and they kind of take everything out of the apartment. Same thing happened with you guys.
Completely unnecessary, of course. In a white-collar case, they could have called the lawyer, and Rod would have come down and surrendered. To do that to his two young children was disgraceful.
And I think, look, we have to remember that Patrick Fitzgerald, for people who are watching, who will say, why are you talking about this guy, Patrick Fitzgerald? Well, he's representing Jim Comey right now. They're best buddies going back to the 80s, working in the Southern District of New York. There he is. He went after Scooter Libby, outrageous prosecution. He went after Conrad Black, the core part of that conviction, ultimately overturned by the Supreme Court. And, of course, not once but 2 times, they tried Blagojevich. And the court, sadly, didn't take the case a couple of weeks ago when they could have cleared up this ridiculous federal bribery statute, which is extremely confusing, wide enough to, drive a truck through. And yet he's praised for being, he's the most esteemed person. He did the Enron investigation and the Enron case, but there were problems there, too. Andrew Weissman overstepped it with Arthur Anderson. Arthur Anderson ends up getting, exonerated. Meanwhile, they laid off 85,000 people in the interim. So, people hear prosecutor and they think, they're civil servants. They're protecting us. In some cases, they are. But they have unchecked power oftentimes, and it can be out of control. And I'm sorry, but as I speak as a former criminal defense attorney, Len, I don't want to be on my high horse here as, it's always the defense is always right. It's not. But if they want to get you for something, they will get you.
It's true. And, Blagojevich was investigated. They began investigating him early on in his administration. He and his family endured 5 years of investigation. He sat for 2 interviews with the FBI because he was somebody that believed in the system and believed that they were, interested in doing right. As Patty said, he was never took a bribe, never took a kickback, never tried to enrich his family. He's one of the only elected officials that has ever been prosecuted for corruption based on political acts, fundraising, and doing political deals. They went after him. You know, they have when the federal government invests resources and their credibility in making the case that somebody is corrupt,
what happens,
they will do whatever it takes.
What happens, Len, if their job is to prosecute and you come up empty? Like when you finish the investigation,
they can't.
You think, well,
they can't.
He didn't take a bribe. He didn't fly in a fancy jet. He didn't take vacations on someone else's dime. But the court is going to convince a jury to say, he believed that he might have to do something that a donor wanted him to do. That's crazy. Bob McDonnell got ultimately exonerated for that.
Right.
The states have a patchwork. But look, we can't relitigate your whole case tonight. But I have to say to the people watching, Bob Mueller, Jim Comey, and Patrick Fitzgerald, just because they're smart guys and went to great schools and have done some good stuff in their careers, doesn't mean they always get it right. And if you're overzealous and you have a history of being overzealous in high-profile cases, we just listed 3: Patrick Fitzgerald with Conrad Black, with Scooter Libby, and now his pal Comey and the involvement in this. You got to start asking tough questions. And Patty, I'll let you speak. I know you have a heavy heart and a lot on your mind. But if you could tell Donald Trump one thing other than pardon your husband or commute a sentence, what would you tell him about Bob Mueller, your experience with him?
Well, I mean, I think the president knows that when people have unchecked power, it's a very dangerous thing. And the role, we believed in the courts, and we believed that the court system was going to work properly. And so if without and that, unfortunately, our trust was misplaced. We thought the justice system was going to work. We believed that people operated in truly and honest, with true and honest motives, and we were sadly mistaken. And this is something that he's seen now. Unfortunately, what we've gone through 10 years ago, and what we've been going through for the last 10 years. This is, if they can bring down my husband, who is the governor of the 5th largest state, for asking for campaign contributions, absolutely no one is safe in this country. Not a single donor is safe, and not a single politician who has to ask for campaign contributions is safe.
Thank you both for being here tonight, telling your story. And President,
thank you.
Litigating the case in the press is very difficult. But at some point, I guess they feel like they have no other option, given the enormity of the special counsel's office, the power they have, the manpower they have. They got a lot of legal eagles working for them, and now Trump has beefed up his team. So I guess it's bring it on. Thanks to both of you.